Welcome to Guy Code, a podcast dedicated to imparting dad wisdom to my son, with your host, Koji Steven Sakai, and friends.
Welcome. My name is Koji, and we're on episode 14. As I mentioned a couple times before in this podcast, my parents weren't necessarily the most traditional Asian parents. They weren't strict. They didn't tell me what to do. They never commanded me. In fact, I never had a single rule in my life from them. I never had any kind of, never had any curfews, never got in trouble. But this might seem like a good thing, but it caused a lot of drama when I was in my teens and 20s because I never grew up with rules. And so that's why I thought this was really, really important. And this is why I wanted to have a conversation with my friend to talk about the code or the rules of life, Ian Harris. Hi, Ian.
Hey, how's it going?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Thanks. And thanks for having me. This is a really cool, when you told me about this is a really cool idea. I really think this is smart and interesting.
Yeah. So I think that my son, he doesn't listen to me now anymore. So I think in the future, after I'm dead or when I'm old, and he could listen to some of this, and hopefully he'll be able to get some kind of advice out of this. So Ian, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, so I am a comedian and a filmmaker and martial artist, I guess and dad as well. I've been doing comedy since that's pretty much the only major job I've ever had since I was 21. And then, I've been doing martial arts my whole life. So I own an MMA school and I coach MMA fighters for, UFC and Bellator and all those sort of things. And I've been writing and directing feature films and short films and music videos and this stuff since about the mid 90s, I guess. So just one of those kind of people that does everything, and maybe one day I'll get good at one of them.
Well, that's what we all do. We all do a little bit. But I love that you have an MMA studio. Do you do kids classes?
I do. Yeah.
What's the age range for the kids?
5 to 12.
Oh wow. So you do the young. Okay. Maybe I'll have to.
Yeah. I mean, go. How old's your son?
He's 8. He does jujitsu right now.
Oh, that's sweet. Yeah. It's we have our classes for the kids are like 6 days a week, and they do jujitsu 2 days a week. They do boxing, kickboxing 2 days a week, and then the other 2 days a week is kind of an MMA self-defense. They mix it up. So
that's awesome. I love it. I mean, that's my big thing about sport jujitsu is that sometimes it's not useful.
Right.
Like I was hearing one of my friends, he was telling me that his son got in a fight and the kid tapped probably by accident and he let go. Because we're taught, right? When you tap, you let go, but in a real situation, that's not always necessarily the thing you do. I mean, you don't hurt the person, right? But you don't necessarily let go, right? When somebody taps you.
Yeah, I think the trick is that, like, I hear a lot of MMA people. I mean, I'm a jiu-jitsu guy, and I'm done everything, but I love jiu-jitsu. That's like one of my favorite parts of training. But it's like I hear that a lot where people say, oh, the traditional martial artists, oh, well, you can't really eye poke and you can't do this, you can't do all these things that would be in a real fight. So jiu-jitsu is BS. And I always have to remind them, like, well, if I can take you down and mount you, I can poke your eyes out.
Yeah.
I don't have to armbar you.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't have to respect your tap either.
Yeah.
But if you aren't trained and if you're not remembering, like when I started doing jiu-jitsu and had to do all my belt tests, a lot of places don't do belt tests anymore. And a lot of places don't do the self-defense stuff. Yeah. If you come from a Gracie or a Francisco Mansour or one of these lineages, in order to get belts, you usually have to do the self-defense techniques as well. Escape from the headlocks, and when there's a self-defense element to it, what happens is you end up learning to, okay, in the street you do this, in the sport you do this.
Yeah. That's why
sports places don't do that.
That's funny because at jiu-jitsu, when people tell me that I don't know how to punch, I'm like, yeah, but I could punch back too. Like when I'm on top of you, I could punch you as well. So it goes both ways. But let's get into it. So we're talking about codes or rules of life. So why don't you tell me your first code?
Well, since we're talking about it, I might as well just say I think everybody should learn to defend themselves. Which I know is slightly counterproductive. That if everybody defended themselves, then everyone would be on equal terms. But my daughter, she's 15. I forced her to do jiu-jitsu, and she boxes and she does things like that. She doesn't do it every day. She doesn't do it. She'll maybe do it once a month, twice a month. She's not super consistent. but she's been doing it since she was 1. And I know that if a real situation came, that some of it would just come to her naturally. And, and for me, it's at least being aware and and knowing how to defend yourself, because not only does it give you confidence, in the fact that you can, if you have to handle yourself, you will. But I find that with confidence, you don't altercations. Like, I'm not a big guy. I'm not a small guy. I'm 5'11". When I'm in shape, I'm 165. But I've intimidated tons of huge guys. I never get in fights, never. And because because I laugh at them and I say, oh, well, you want to go? How do we do this? And they all go, oh, wait, this guy's not afraid of me. And just that alone, so many altercations. And I think, in this day and age, everything's bullying, and you have so many girls with, have to worry about these creepy guys. And, we saw with the Me Too movement and all this kind of stuff. So to me, it's like, learn to defend yourself, learn some jujitsu, which I think is, if you're not going to do MMA and learn everything, you should just learn jujitsu, because I think jujitsu is the most complete system for self-defense, in that all altercations, 90% of all altercations end up on the ground.
Yeah.
So you might as well learn how to fight there.
That's actually funny, because that's around my first piece of advice as well, which is don't look for fights, but never back down. So you have nothing to prove to anybody, your buddies, some girl, because I might have a son. So he has nothing to prove to anybody. But at the same time, bullies, they kind of get off on people being afraid of them. Whether that's real bullies in the schoolyard or bullies at work or, anything like you said, they get off on like having you be afraid. But if you're not afraid, you're not looking for it. But if you're not afraid, you stand up for yourself, and then the one thing I always want to teach my son is, don't be afraid to walk away. That the toughest guys out there are the guys that walk away from it, because they have nothing to prove. But that doesn't mean that doesn't mean you're backing down. That doesn't mean you're a chicken. That just means that you don't need to prove anything to anybody, but that you're defending yourself, that you're defending other people around you, that you're taking care of yourself and your safety, but you're not looking for it. You know what I mean? Which is what I really love about jujitsu, which is that it's not like something like, people always like say, well, you're learning how to fight, but it's like, well, in order to fight in jujitsu, you have to be so close. It has to be, it's like on the ground. It's like, it's not something I'm going to like walk up to somebody in a club and start wrestling somebody,
Right, exactly.
Whereas like if you're standing up and you're fighting, like people always want to like stand up and fight, and it's like one of those things where I think that's an important lesson. But I really like what you're saying, and I do think that's really, really important, especially nowadays with the whole bullying thing and all that stuff. Everyone's
and I think, like you said, like sometimes just not backing down and being confident, they will walk away.
Yeah.
And however that makes them feel, that's on them. They might walk away and go, well, I let the guy go. Or they might walk away going, oh, I'm a coward. It doesn't really matter. Yeah. The point is that you didn't have to walk away, but you walked away in nature you didn't confront, you didn't start an altercation, but you didn't back down. And in the sense, you're walking away from the fight, but you're not walking away from the situation. Yeah. And I think that's really key for lots of things. Yeah. And, like I said, to me, it's and if you're confident, sometimes it's just those words. It's just saying, you want to do this here? Like, I mean, I had to tell a guy one time, hey man, you're 2 seconds away from embarrassing yourself in front of your children. Like you have, like I told that to a guy who was like, getting in my face, and I said, you are, he's a big kind of heavy set dude, smoking, drinking beer at a park or whatever, and he had like 2 little kids, like 3 and 5. I said, your parents, you're, and he was, barking about me something, and I said, if you do this, you're gonna get your butt kicked, and in front of your kids are never gonna forget that time that you acted like an ass and got your butt kicked by some guy who's half your size. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's embarrassing. Think about how that's gonna affect your kids in life. And just reasoning. He was like, all right, well, but and also like probably like, oh well, maybe I don't know what this guy's gonna do to me. Like, you know what I mean? Just that was enough I didn't need to like punch him or do anything stupid.
Yeah, I agree. All right, well, let me hear your second piece of advice.
Well, I think I would say that this kind of goes along with this as well. But it's an overall thing. I say you always root or help the underdog. And for me, what that means is I'm a greater good kind of a person. Like I think that you have to, whether this is voting, whether this is standing up for somebody physically, whatever the deal is, you have to support and help the people that are less fortunate than you. and you have to think about the greater good of society. Sometimes the things that you want in life conflict with the things that are going to help the most amount of people. And I've had that in voting, where I've had to vote for something where it's like, I personally don't like this, but I know that I need to vote in this other direction because it's going to protect my right to have that, to have the choice or whatever. And I think that that's key. I think sometimes you have to look and go, what is this just about me, or is this about other people? And do I take a small sacrifice to help more people? And is this person less fortunate than me? Wouldn't it be better for me to help lift that person up than to step over them on the way on my way to where I'm going? So I think you have to look at the greater good, and you always have to help the underdog.
I love that you said greater good, and I love that. I think that's totally right on. And again, I think we're right on the same page, because my next piece of advice was stick up for people. That that be the voice for the weak, be the voice for, be a fist for the weak. So if somebody's in a situation, like if somebody's being bullied, you have the right to step in and stop it from happening, especially if you could protect yourself. Mm-hmm. And then the one thing that I always want to emphasize always is there are worse things than death. In that there's being a coward, there's not standing up for the people that deserve to be stepped up for, Yep. Yes. And I always, for example, like the one group of people I always think about are the Quakers. They were the first people that were anti-slavery. They were the first people for women's rights. They were the first people for the Japanese Americans, like my family. They stood up for the Japanese Americans. Mm-hmm. They stood up for gay and lesbian rights. I mean, they were there. I mean, they were doing all that before it was popular to do those kinds of things. And so, and they took a lot of shit for it. So I think it's really, to me, it's important that you're the voice, that you try to stand up for these people, especially in times where there's a lot of hate. So today you might not like Mexican Americans, or not you, but the government might not like Mexican Americans, but tomorrow it could be like, it could be Chinese people, it could be whatever, gay people again, it could all be these different groups of people. So it doesn't matter if it's your people or you're not your people, and it goes down to like, my family was incarcerated in the internment camps during World War II. And what I always say is that back then it was Japanese Americans, but we need to make sure it's not another group of people in the future. That same thing,
Yeah, it's that I don't know the exact quote, but there's a famous quote where it's, first they came for the Jews, but I didn't care because I wasn't Jewish. Then they came for with the Japanese, but I didn't care because I wasn't Japanese. Yeah. Then they came for the weak or the gays, but I didn't care because I wasn't gay. Now they're coming for me, and there's nobody to help me.
Exactly.
Fight for to stand up for myself, or to help me fight this tyranny. And it's like, yeah, you have to fight tyranny together, and because it's the same thing. Like I'm me, I'm a big atheist. And like, that's all my comedy's about. I think that, but it's like, that's all my comedy's about. That's, a big thing that I do, advocacy. And I always tell people, I'm the first one that will stand behind anybody for their rights to believe what they believe. Like, I will stand there with a Christian, with a Muslim, and say, hey, you have the right to believe what you believe. And because I know that my rights are the first ones to go in right now. Like, if anyone doesn't have rights, religious rights, freedom rights in America, it's atheists. There are 13 states that we're not allowed to hold office.
Really? I didn't know.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yes. Sorry, my house phone is ringing. So we are, and the thing is that, like you're saying, so for me, it's like you have to stand up for them also, because that's standing up for the greater good, right? Yeah. It's like, I mean, I may not be a Christian or a Muslim, and I don't want them to force their beliefs on me, but I want them to be able to have those beliefs. Yeah. Because then they should turn around and go, oh, well, you know what? He gets to have his beliefs as well. Yeah. And as soon as we start going, no, I don't like his beliefs, then what happens when you're the minority? Someday you're going to be the minority, and you're going to be upset that you didn't stand up, you didn't help out the minority,
Exactly.
So nice.
All right. Well, let's hear your third one. What's your third piece of advice?
I would say that for me, critical thinking is something that most people can't do. And I think it's something that I'm not sure if they're teaching it much in school these days, but I think you have to go out of your way to be, in my community, it would be called being a skeptic, and not, people confuse skepticism with cynicism. They think, oh, you're skeptical about everything. No, that's cynicism. A skeptic, or a scientific skepticism, is someone who looks at the evidence, looks at and goes through critical thinking and says, okay, uses Occam's razor. What is the least, the simplest explanation is probably true. So when you're looking at stuff that seems unsolved or is unsolved, what is this? Oh, I saw this thing in the sky. Was it an alien, or was it a, Tesla shooting off a rocket, or what is it? Let's look at it. For me, you have to think critically on all these claims, whether it's a religion or a belief in something small or anything, or the politics. Look at things critically and skeptically. And for me, it's a matter of waiting until there's evidence and being okay with being a skeptic or a critical thinker. Means you have to be okay saying, I don't know. And I find that is the biggest problem. We're seeing it right now with this COVID thing, is that everyone wants an answer right now. Yeah. And I've seen people saying like, well, the CDC did this, the CDC did that, and they keep changing their position. Yeah, we have a brand new novel virus that we know nothing about. So you want the answer the day it came out. We have to let and see what's going on. Things are going to change, and we have to be able to change with it. That's scientific method, to be able to go, it looks like this for right now. Let's act this way. And then new information comes on and go, okay, we found out more information and now it's this way. We can act this way. It doesn't mean that they were wrong or they're trying to trick you or there's some grand conspiracy. It just means we don't have all the information, and it's okay to not have all the information, because we'll build on the information. And eventually, at some point, science thought the sun went around the earth. Through our study of that, we now know that the opposite is true, that the earth goes around the sun. Yeah. And it doesn't mean that they were horrible, evil people for thinking it. But if we hadn't had those people looking, Galileo and Copernicus and all these people, we would never know the stuff we know now. Yeah. So to me, it's like, be open and think critically,
And counter to that is that, not counter, but in addition to that, it's okay to be wrong. That yes, it doesn't mean you're less. It doesn't mean that, and like you said, it's okay to not to know, but it's okay to be wrong. That we could be wrong about something and still be moving forward. I think that's always like I think there's this feeling in our society that if you're wrong, you failed. Right. I don't think that, I think there's a good fail and there's a bad fail, right? There's a good fail of like, you learn something, you're going to move on. We're going to get better, whether it's COVID or, even on jujitsu. If you lose, it doesn't mean you're terrible. It's just that you face somebody better than you at that point, and you have to train harder and learn something more and work, right? It doesn't mean you suck. Right. I think in our society, we're at this point where like, if you say, I don't know, it's like saying you failed. Right. And if you say, and if you make a mistake, it's like you're not, you're not a good person or something. It's like weird. Yeah. It's like such a weird thing.
And even if you are the worst in the world at jiu-jitsu and you do suck at it, okay, somebody has to be. And then you work on it, and eventually you won't be. But but this idea of being obtuse to change or facts or reason because it makes you feel insecure, that's what builds cognitive dissonance. And it's like you need to be able to say, and it's painful, man. I mean, it's so painful when someone calls you out and goes, hey, you just said something that wasn't factual. We see it now on social media. You post something, check out this article, and then somebody posts the Snopes, and they're like, sorry, that's not true. So many people will be like, well, and they have to defend why they, and it's like, it's hard to go, thank you for telling me that it wasn't true. I'll take it down now, or I will make it whatever. That's hard because it feels like defeat. It feels like you did something horrible. And it's like, no, now I know a better position. That's a good thing. Yeah. Being wrong and then now being right again. I don't care about being right now. I care about having the right answers ultimately.
Yeah. And actually, this is funny because I think we're simpatico on all these things, because my advice is also similar in that if you believe it so much, if you believe something so much, you don't need to convince other people because you believe it enough. So it's like, it goes back to one of my favorite books is by Robert Pirsig, the Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. And he said that, if you really believed in God, for example, the people that really push you to believe in him or her are the people that don't believe. Because if you believed, you wouldn't need to push somebody. So for example, it'd be like, if I was arguing with you about the sun and the sun wasn't out right now, and I said, the sun's coming out tomorrow. And you said, no, it's not coming out. You're wrong. You're stupid. And I was like, no, it's coming out. And I'm not going to argue with you because I know for a fact that it's coming out tomorrow. Right. In my head, and tomorrow we'll see. Right. If I had to like go and like hit you because you didn't believe the sun was coming out tomorrow, it just shows that maybe I don't really believe. Yeah. So, I think for me, it's like, the belief is something you need to believe in yourself before you try to tell other people about the belief, and believe it so much that, you don't need to tell. And I'm not religious at all, but the people I respect who are religious are the people that don't need to feel, they don't need to proselytize to me, right? They don't need to tell me like that I need to believe, because when I see them doing good work, that's when I'm like, that's a really good, I like what they're doing.
Right.
But if you're telling me like I'm going to go to hell because I believe in this, and the black people are this or this and this, and gay people, and you know what I mean? It's like, that makes me feel like you don't really believe. It's not a true belief, right? It's not 100% belief.
Well, and look at, speaking of religion, look at people. I mean, one of the most religious, at least honestly, that we know, religious presidents we've ever had was Jimmy Carter. He was super religious. But even to this day, at 90 something years old, he never preaches, he never proselytizes. He puts his actions where his mouth is. He's at 90 still literally building houses, not just funding them. He's out there pounding nails, building houses, Habitat for Humanity. And then you have these people that you go, well, do they even really believe it? These like televangelists and the Billy Grahams and the Franklin Grahams and these people that are telling you what to do and how to do it. And it's like, you have to knock on doors and you have to give me money and you have to do all this kind of stuff. And it's like, I never hear it from Jimmy Carter, but if you were to ask, I'd be like, oh yeah, I know he's a really religious guy. Like he's a Southern Baptist, like but you never hear it from him. He just does what he does and he believes what he believes, and his actions show that he's a good person. It's like, isn't that what's most important anyway?
Unlike our current president, who's supposedly really, really religious,
how
many divorces does he have?
Right.
He doesn't believe any of that stuff. I mean, that's the irony about him and Obama, was that Obama was really religious. I mean, he didn't talk about it a lot, but he was a religious, like super,
right,
like Christian guy. Like he came really late to like the whole gay marriage thing,
right.
But if you listen to like the people talking, you think that he's like a communist Muslim,
yeah,
and that you think that like Trump is like this most religious guy, where it's like actually flipped. It's like,
I would be willing to bet that Trump, up until 3 years ago, I would be willing to bet he'd never even touched a Bible. Well, and I'm not even trying to be funny. I bet you he's never even looked at one, and it's like, then finally they said, get a couple passages, so that if people ask, you can just keep saying Corinthians 2 or whatever he says, when they ask you what your favorite Bible passage is. But I mean, yeah, they ask him, he's like, well, it's all good. It's great stuff. It's very Bible-y, and there's God stuff in there. It's fantastic. Like, have you ever, like, I don't care that he's read it, because I don't believe it, but it's like, it's amazing to me that his people who follow him are like, he's such a religious guy. Really? Yeah. Really? You think, yeah, no.
He's the opposite of what Jesus was.
Right.
In every single way. It's crazy.
Republican Jesus. Have you?
All right. Well, let's hear your next piece of advice, your fourth piece of advice.
Well, so there's, was that, yeah, where was that? Was that 4? All right, cool. I would say, these two kind of go, two that I would put together. And I think you have to have honesty and integrity with everything you do. Like, to me, and one of my things that I have with my daughter that I used to say as a kid is, that we always tell the truth and we always keep our word. Those are like two things I used to say to her all the time. We always tell the truth, we always keep our word. And it's like, to me, everyone on the planet lies at some point. We all do some sort of lies. It's a matter of the most amount of, sometimes you have to lie to tell the truth. I understand that. Sometimes you have to, to protect people and whatever. But in general, being an honest person and with integrity, is someone who people know, I can rely on this guy. If I need help, this guy has got my back. Like, when people ask about me, I want people to always go, hey, I know I can go to him whenever I need, even whether I barely know you or whether I'm your best friend. I want people, the first thing they think of me is, that guy says what he means what he says. He's a honest person, and he's forthright, and he's somebody who will have my back no matter what. And I think, I think that, if you don't have your word, you don't have anything. Like, if I can say, this is what I believe and this is what I stand for, and I'm going to do these things, I should be trying to do that to the best of my ability. Obviously nothing within 100%. You can't do 100% all the time, but to the best of my ability, I should be trying to live up to my own ideals, my stated ideals. And people have to know that my handshake is as good as gold. my word is as good as gold. And if it isn't, then you're nothing. Somebody who goes back on their word to me is or who has nefarious, trying to undermine or trying to play a game, or someone who's trying to, I've had it with other coaches in the gym where it's like trying to steal fighters from you and all this kind of stuff. To me, those are the worst people on the planet. I can never look at that person again. I have to cut them out of my life. I hold them at arms, whatever I have to do to keep those people away, because to me, lack of integrity is the worst thing you could possibly have.
I love that. I think that's really strong. I mean, that's something that everyone has to struggle with. It's like a constant thing that people have to work on, right? Because every day you're tested, right? Every day you're tested, I think, on these kinds of things. And it's hard, because you're right. Like, especially in Hollywood, it's especially challenging sometimes because you meet super shady people. And, I remember I told somebody once, I was like, my goal is not to screw anybody. And I was like, it floored them. I was like, I just want everyone to get what they deserve. I want to pay everybody. I want everyone to be treated fairly and equally, cause I believe strongly that everyone on set should get paid.
Yeah.
Something.
Absolutely.
I mean, even if it's like a $5,000 feature, everyone gets paid. And something. I don't know if it's like what they could get, but it's $5,000 or whatever it is, right? It's like
exactly.
It's what we have, and I think that's really, really valuable. And kind of staying on that topic of kind of like how to, being empathetic and doing the right thing. One of the things I really want to teach is always that when you deal with people, you should always think, you never want to be the reason someone has to go to therapy. So every time, life is tough for people, and so to be kind to people. Don't needlessly hurt people. Don't be a jerk to people for no reason. If you really think if you really think in your head, before you say something mean, you think, do I really want to be the reason this person goes to therapy? And there's nothing wrong with therapy, by the way. Therapy's fine. Right. But that you don't want to be the reason someone has to go for it. And actually, it's funny. This is my parental guidelines always, is I want my son to go to therapy in the future, but not because of his mom and dad. I don't want him to have mom and dad issues. That's the last thing, right? It could be about other stuff, but not about us. And I think that's important. So when you're in relationships, don't treat them in a way that makes them have to go to therapy later. Don't play games with them. Don't needlessly hurt them, be honest with them. So I think that's always been something that I think is important.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You don't know what other people are going through either, Yeah. So it's like, it's hard to judge people too, or deal with people. My wife has always asked me, like, oh, how do you deal with that person? How do you like that person? That person has screwed you over, that person lies, or that whatever. And I say, well, I know that they do that. So I deal with them in that way because I don't know why they do that. Like the reason, I can't judge them the way I would judge myself. I have to deal with that person. Not that I want somebody who's blatantly lying, but there are people who have personality issues that you go, that's that person. And I know that person. And if I like their other qualities, I have to judge them when they do something. I don't judge them from why would they do that? I would have done it this way. I have to think, why would they do that? Well, why did they do that? Oh, well, his dad left him when he was a kid, and now he's got these abandonment issues, so he does dumb things sometimes. Yeah. I have to be sympathetic to the fact that that person does that, and not be another one of those causes, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, everyone should go to therapy. I think it's a great thing, but I do think that you don't know what the person, you're right, you don't know what the person's going through, and what you're saying could make it worse, could push them over the edge, could make whatever issues are going worse, but to your point, I think if you're honest and open, that in that way, you're not kind of causing that to make it worse. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's really interesting. All right. Well, let's hear your last piece of advice.
So the last one is really basically all these, and it's almost the same thing here we just said, but it was, for me, it's the underlying or umbrella thing of empathy. You have to have empathy for it. I just see that over and over and over, people don't have it. And if I were to fine tune that, since we've been kind of in a general sense talking about empathy in general, I would say I always think back to what I think is probably one of the, if not one of the greatest novels in history is To Kill a Mockingbird. I don't know if you've read To Kill a Mockingbird, but Atticus Finch, his entire thing, what makes him such an incredible character, is that he teaches his kids back in the 20s or whatever the heck it was, the early 1900s, to have empathy. And the way he says it is, he's like, the you don't know what a person is going through until you've walked a mile in their shoes. And to me, it's like, that's what I see more than anything when it comes to politics and life and how we treat people and religion and all these things, is that so many people can't do, no, I know they can't, some can't probably, but they don't put themselves in the other person's shoes before thinking or making a decision. And we see it a lot of times in politics. Speaking of, like you talked about Obama becoming, being against gay marriage and then coming forward and then having a turn. There's some, forgot how many in the last 10 years, Republicans, senators and Congress people that were against gay marriage because they were religious, right, quote unquote. And then they became for gay marriage. And the reason is because they had somebody in their family who was gay. They found out their grandson was gay. They found out that their kid was gay, or their nephew, or somebody that they loved. And they were like, well, I don't want to hurt this person that I love. And to me, it's like, you shouldn't have to wait until it smacks you in the face. You should have been able to go, wait a second, somebody else has a grandson who's gay. I don't want that person to have to suffer.
Yeah.
It shouldn't have to come directly to you. You should be able to put yourself in other shoes and go, how would I like that if I wasn't allowed to do this? How would I like that if my grandson, if my niece wasn't allowed to do these certain things? How would I feel if I went to the courthouse and there was a Muslim prayer above the courthouse, being a Christian? Well, how would an atheist or a Muslim feel if there's a Christian prayer above that they feel excluded in their own government, in their own courtroom?
Yeah.
You have to look and say, how would I feel if the shoe was on the other foot? And you have to do that in every situation before you act, in my opinion. And it's like, that comes down to actually understanding empathy. Empathy isn't, oh, now that it smacked me in the face and my grandson is gay, oh, I guess I'll start respecting gay people's rights now. You have to do that before it hits you in the face.
Yeah.
For me,
it's like COVID-19, right? I mean, it's like, you have to, so many of these people are just like, well, it's not going to affect me. I'm not an old person or whatever it is. I don't have a compromised immune system, so I don't care. I'm going to go out and do whatever I'm going to do normally. Or even like, I still think it's silly that we need a celebrity to die or get sick in order for it to become an issue. It's like, no, it was an issue before this. I mean, it's great. It galvanizes things. I get it. But like, it's like weird to me that has to happen before it becomes an issue. Like AIDS or, like any of these things, right?
Yeah. And I think that's like, that's the people that are kind of in between. They don't, there's like levels to empathy, right? There are people that just automatically get it. They automatically feel for I think that's where the term bleeding heart liberal comes from back in the days. Like, oh, your heart bleeds for everybody else. I remember as a little kid, my dad used to, I'm very liberal. My dad was always very liberal. And he would say that, oh, they call me a bleeding heart and this and that. And I said, well, what does that mean? I mean, as a little kid, I'm like, somebody said bleeding heart liberal. What does that mean? My dad goes, oh, it means your heart bleeds for everybody. I go, as a little kid, the word pejorative, but I was like, that's a bad thing? Why is it a pejorative to say that your heart bleeds for other people in humanity? Like that should never be, that should be praise. This guy's a bleeding heart. That's like a badge of honor. Like to me, I never understood that as being a pejorative, that it's like, oh, poor guy, he has empathy for people.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something that's not really happening a lot in our culture, I think, is the teaching of empathy. You know, and I think that's one of the challenges is that how do you get people to understand what it feels like to be in another person's shoes? How does it feel to be a minority, or how does it feel to be a person that looks different or whatever it is? In a lot of ways, the world has changed, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, I'm not sure how old you are, but I remember when I was a kid, it wasn't okay to be gay at school. Yeah. And now you could now you could be gay, and that's cool. Yeah. But, or African-American, whatever it is, things have changed, but in a lot of ways they haven't. And, like for this Asian COVID thing, it's bad. Oh, Asian. It's like, what? And I try to, go ahead.
No. I just think, I know it's got to be crazy being, now it's like people getting beat up for being Asian, as if that has anything to do with it's crazy. It's crazy to me that we're that dumb, by the way, but yeah.
But we always want to blame other people, and because we don't put ourselves in their shoes. Right. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really, really important. Okay. So my last one is, respect is earned, but always be respectful. So I'd never believed that just because you're old, you should be respected. but I think that you should be respectful to them, because respect is something that should only be for people that actually deserve it, that have done things like that have done great things, or not. It doesn't have to be great things in the like taking over a world kind of thing, but great, right. Just, done great things in their lives. But you should always be respectful of everybody, because I think that you could learn something from every single person, whether they're quote good people or quote bad people. In a lot of ways, I think it's more interesting to learn from people that are bad. Like I used to work with juveniles, writing with people in juvenile detention centers, and those kids had great stories, and if you just listen to them, then I would love to like bring them in these classrooms and just have them talk. And if you listen to them talk, you'll hear all these lessons about what not to do a lot of times, but also like taking advantage of what good things they had, But my big thing is I never want to make sure that I never want to, just because I believe that just because you're old, you should never have respect. You should never be respect because they're old, because they're assholes who are old and they're assholes who are young.
It's funny. I get a lot of crap for this, but the comedian Doug Stanhope has actually said a really funny bit about it. But I feel the same way with everybody, like you're saying. But we get this now after 9/11 with anyone who's in the military, that they're all heroes. And I'm not saying that there aren't tons of heroes in the military. I'm not saying you should. But it's like, I know a lot of people personally that went into the military for reasons that weren't altruistic. I know people that are psychopaths, that they went into the military because they wanted to kill people. Like I really know a few people that are like, man, I can't kill people legally here, and I know people that are get in there and they're these authoritarian jerks. It's like, like cops. Sometimes cops are authoritarian assholes who wanted to control people. Sometimes they're altruistic people who want to protect and serve. But we can't assume that that every cop or every soldier is there to help you out when the drunk guy at the bar who's calling you, who's making his gay whatever and wanting to start a fight, who's on leave. That guy's not a hero. Sorry, he isn't. And but what I think that the other thing that I thought was, listening to what you were saying is, and it's not just with the word respect, but I find this with a lot of things. We have this very black and white thing in America where, or just maybe as humans, where if you're not respecting, that means you're disrespecting. Yeah. But that's not true.
Yeah.
I can not respect you, but that doesn't mean I'm disrespecting you. It's like for me with when I try to explain to people what an atheist is. An atheist isn't somebody who denies that there are any gods anywhere. An atheist is somebody who has not yet accepted the evidence that has been presented to them of the various gods out there. Somebody comes and says, well, my God is this, this, this. And I look at that, I go, I don't think that exists. Sorry. Just like unicorns. I'm not against the idea that there might have been a unicorn somewhere, but I have no reason to believe it. I don't, hey, unicorns suck and they should be, and I just go, I don't buy it. Yeah. And it's like, you can be like, I don't have respect for you yet without disrespecting somebody.
Yeah. Well, that's why you could be respectful, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Listen to take it, you're not trying to take advantage of people. You're not being disrespectful to them.
Right.
It doesn't mean you have to be like, I worship you and I believe that you're an amazing human being. Right.
Yes.
And those should be limited to the people that I think really deserved it.
That earn it. Yeah.
Yeah. That earn it. That really have done something, whether small or big. Those are very, very rare people. And I think, and those should be reserved for people that actually did something,
Yeah. 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 Actually, respect and disrespect are both earned.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
This has been an awesome conversation. I would love to hear, do you have any life advice, last advice for my son that you'd want to pass on that's not about this code that you think is important?
I mean, man, I would say the thing is that if you need to take all of this stuff, probably however many episodes you end up doing, and first off, you're going to hear a lot of things crossing. And when you keep hearing the same people saying the same things, that might be a good thing to listen to.
Exactly.
But also I find my wife and I have been together for, I'm almost 49. So this is our 30th year we've been together.
Wow.
And not married all that time. We married after 13 years, but we've been together for a long time. And I have a lot of long-standing relationships with friends as well. Like I'm pretty, like I said, I want people to think of me as, having integrity and honesty and somebody they can trust. And I think because of that, I have long-lasting relationships. And because of the fact that I look at people and I say, I'm not just going to close that person off because he's an asshole. Maybe I should help find out why he's an asshole and and like him for his good things and work around his assholery, if you will, whatever. And I find, so what I was going to say is I think that everyone seems to have problems with relationships, whether it's a romantic relationship or whether it's friend relationships. And people always ask me about relationship advice. And I'm like, look, if you are all these things that we've been talking about, you think critically, you're open, you're honest, to yourself at least, and you are not worried about being wrong. And all of these things, you're empathetic, you're putting yourself in their shoes, you're thinking about the greater good, you're respecting, being respectful, all these things. If you can kind of put those under an umbrella and just be selfless for a little bit in your relationships, and allow the other person to do the same thing, then you can get to a point where you're wrong and you can say, you know what, I was wrong in this situation and I'll try not to do it again. Because if you realize most relationships, you hear it over and over where this person keeps trying to do this thing and we fight about it and they never resolve it. And then it comes up again and they don't resolve it. And it comes because the resolving it's painful.
Yeah.
So people just argue about it. And then after the 10th time it comes up, they go, you keep doing these things, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
And it's like, you have to learn how to resolve things and resolve every issue. It's like the whole thing of not going to bed angry or whatever. People think my wife and I argue a lot, and we do, but we go, no, we're just solving our problems. And we solve it quickly. And we solve it with past, like a court case where it's like, hey, remember on such and such, such and such, such and such, this case said this, you agreed to this, now you're doing it again. And then the other person has to go, yes, you're right, I'm doing it again, I'll stop. Or I'm doing it again, but here's the reason why, because you're doing this thing. And you go, yes, I am doing that thing. And if you can use all these things and be honest and not take everything too personally, you'll be able to get through a lot of relationships as long as your goal is to solve the problem, not be right.
Yeah. And also, not only just within relationships, it could be the same issues that keep popping up in every relationship if you're not dealing with it, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that's really great. And also it's great to argue, because if you're not arguing, I think that might be worse, right? If two people don't care enough, don't even care enough to argue with each other, then that's a bad sign.
Yeah, an argument could just, you could call it a discussion. You could call it a whatever. There doesn't have to be a negative stigma on the word argue.
Yeah.
Argue is a resolution of something. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's combat.
Yeah.
So.
Well, thank you. This has been great. So how can people follow you? How can people get a hold of you? How can people hear more about what you're working on?
Well, you can, just Ian Harris. I'm pretty easy to find. I think all of my social media is some version of comediocre. So it's comedy mixed with mediocre. So if you find Ian Harris and you see things as comediocre, follow me, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all that stuff. And then, I have my last comedy special. If you guys have Amazon Prime, it's called Ian Harris Extraordinary. And it's on Amazon Prime. And my website is skepticcomedian.com or ianharriscomedian.com. They both go to the same place. And please, if you like comedy and you like science and skepticism and that sort of stuff, that's kind of a lot of what I do. So my stuff. And if I can do one more plug, I have myself and a comedian named Ty Barnett have a podcast called Critical and Thinking with Ty Barnett and Ian Harris, which is pretty interesting. So we'll have to have you on there, Coach.
I would love to come on.
Okay, cool.
Great. Well, thank you so much for coming on. And please, for everyone, please rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast. This is a labor of love for me. And this is an opportunity to get some advice for not just for my child, but for everybody. So thank you. Thank you, Ian. Thank you, everybody.
My pleasure. Thanks.